Hello, podcast listeners. How much do you want to eat some pizza? Have it ready because we've got a lot to talk about in this episode, including a chunk about delicious pizza, Hickory Farms, whether or not you should have a new couch every couple of years. We cover a lot of territory on today's episode of JJ Meets World. But first, I want you to do this. Grab a flashlight, because if the power goes out while you're listening to this, I don't want you to stop the episode. I want you to just go on. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is! He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
JJ, do you think that the fact that I have moved a lot is part of the same psychological condition I have, where I'm always like constantly rearranging my home?
Yes.
Why do I do that?
So I think that permanence is something that is not in your genetic makeup. And I think partially it's because, like, even as a kid, like, you had several major moves. And, you know, nothing in your life ever was completely permanent in your childhood. And you've brought that into your adulthood as well. The same way. And I don't think that what you're experiencing is any kind of a trauma, but like people who have trauma bring it into their adult lives in a lot of ways.
That makes sense. I mean, I don't feel it in the sense of like, oh, woe is me, I wish I wasn't like this. In as much as I just kind of go, I wonder why I'm like this.
Right. I mean, I also think that you're somebody too who, like, you have an attachment to things, but you're not a materialistic person.
Okay.
So, like, in the time I've known you, the pieces of furniture that you've owned have, I mean, like, it's drastic swings, right?
Yeah.
So you'll have like a really amazing desk that the next time I see you, you're like, yeah, I got rid of that desk and I got this table instead. And it's a really like heavy built table. And I think partially for us being like theater people, maybe that plays into it, because a theater set is not meant to be permanent. It's meant to be taken down at the end of the run. And so maybe you see your life as just a series of like show openings and closings.
I think that's a big part of it. But I also think a part of it is, and I don't want to word this to make it sound like I'm saying, oh, I have an affliction or something like that. I don't. But I have come to understand over the past couple of years that I have, I guess the best way you could put it is, I don't know if you'd want to call it an aesthetic. Shoot, I just had a word there that goes with it. Basically, the idea of this coffee maker that's next to me is so loud it's distracting me. An aesthetic sensitivity. So, like, I am very specific about what won't go on my walls, right? So, like, you know what this place looked like when the landlord was living here previously, right?
Oh, I definitely did.
And he's a maximalist, right? So he wants to fill every single piece of wall with whatever he can find. If he's like, oh, there's space right here, I'll put a mandolin right there. And his place ends up looking like Applebee's after a bit. If I were to complete an arrangement or a moving in of a place, then you would see that my walls would actually be fairly bare, but that there would be sort of a feng shui to it. I feel like there's this feeling of almost like aesthetic, environmental rest or calm that I'm trying to achieve, and I never quite get there. And I'm always trying to do so much work to do it that I think I get overwhelmed by it. It's the kind of thing where I really need to bring in like a Marie Kondo type figure who can come in and not just to help me figure out what to keep, but also to go, let's figure out how to make this place look right. So like
Okay.
right now, yesterday, and maybe it's because I just had time in my hands, but I decided that I wanted to move my archive from that room it's in to this room that I'm in now to free up that wall so I could make art on that wall at some point. But it took me all of yesterday, and there's so much work to do still. So I'm probably looking at another full day today of doing a project that I need to push through to finish. Otherwise, it's going to get 75% of the way. And then I'm going to, but you know what would be even better if I did this. And then I'm going to start from scratch again. That's a cycle I want to see if I can get out of.
And I think it's going to be difficult for you. You know, I mean, is anything that's well preserved in our routines. I think it's going to be difficult. You know, I hoard things that remind me of a simpler time. So I just recently redid my office, and I'm like, I'm going to put all my awesome stuff out here. Well, I realized I've got too much stuff to decorate my office with. So I've given
awesome
4
stuff.
shelves over to only 3 different things that I love. And there's so many other things. And I need to get to the point of say, like, okay, what do I really love? And what am I more or less just hoarding right now?
Right.
And keeping, from being out into the world. I will also say this, Tucker, that you're one of the people who, like, when you decide to curate something, you become a master at it.
Oh. Or obsessive. Obsessive is probably the word.
No, because obsessive is somebody who I think would have to be, like have to do this. So like every time you go on vacation, you're going on vacation to simply like do the hunt for what you want. But you're somebody, like I've moved your comic books a bunch of times with you, and you have things that you love. And I like the Marie Kondo idea of like, if it doesn't spark joy, but like what she's talking about is when you arrange your living room.
Yeah, she's
not
talking,
when you are
you're
cleaning through your memories.
You're
Like,
right. Well, I mean, kind of. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I hear what you're saying.
Also, we had a decorator when I was a young man. We used a woman named Rebecca,
Really?
who helped my mom with decorating, and then like even things like choosing furniture. Like as an adult now, when I go somewhere to choose furniture, it is a daunting task.
Yeah.
Because you're looking through a giant warehouse essentially of stuff to try and figure out, okay, what stuff can I stand to look at day in, day out for potentially the next 15 to 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Jill and I were tasked with having to buy a new bed when we moved into the house we're in now. And we knew we wanted a king size bed, but we went out and we were like, okay, do we want to buy this bed? Well, now if you buy this bed, you really have to invest in this bedroom set. Otherwise, everything is kind of hodgepodge together. Well, maybe I could just grab some stuff and I could refinish it, if we went to like a thrift store. Oh, well, is he actually going to do that or is he not? Does he have the skill set for it? I don't know. Let's not wait and see. And we ended up buying just a simple frame and then a headboard that sort of matched our color scheme, but not exactly. And now when I walk in that bedroom, I'm like, I love this bedroom because I love sleeping, but I don't really care for what we have as a setup for furniture in there. And it it bugs me. And in a weird way, I'd be embarrassed if I had a party and everyone was throwing their coats on the bed and they're like, green wall, blue headboard. I don't know if I would have made that choice.
You know what I think most homes, excuse me, and by most homes, I'm going to say 95% of houses, apartments, whatever, wherever you hang your hat that I've been to, the one thing that no one seems to ever get right is the lighting.
Oh, interesting.
The lighting to me, and it's not about, an artistic presentation of like a 3-point lighting. No, that's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about lighting a room so that you actually want to be in it and that it doesn't do a lot of lights. People don't realize it, especially if you just have regular bulbs up in your ceiling and there's no diffusion or very little diffusion. that does not create a nice light profile for the room, right? Everything is in harsh shadow, and it gets kind of hard to see after a bit, and you will start to get migraines from it. And people don't necessarily realize that the effect that lighting can actually have on your emotional state when you're in a room. What I want to see, what I aim for in my living space is when I'm not I want to get as much natural sunlight in as I can during the midday hours, right, when you actually have sunlight. But then in the evening, I want a nice, warm, diffused glow that fills the room, so it's not too dark, but there aren't harsh shadows everywhere, and it's a warmer color than like a colder light, right? And that it warms up the later you get before you go to bed. That's kind of what I want. But most light fixtures that I see at Menards or whatever, they just don't diffuse well enough, and they don't provide, I think, enough light. I think most light fixtures don't actually provide enough light. Look at me being first world American faux homeowner over here.
Well, I think it depends on the fact that my home was built in 1957, and at the time, recessed lighting in a room was not really the thing. So those are, light bulbs that go into the ceiling, into some kind of a can. There were a lot of lamp fixtures and sconces that people did. And so if you take my living room space, the living room at my house never had recessed light. It had a light switch that controlled 3 or 4 outlets. And so you would essentially plug a lamp into that outlet, and then when you hit the light switch, the lamps would all turn on. But it has a giant bay window that faces east, and then a couple of windows that face south. So during the daytime, that room is bathed in beautiful light, gorgeous light. But the second that the sun starts to go down, really by the time, 3 or 4 o'clock hits during even the summer months, it becomes dark very fast. And so my mom used to have lamps in here. And when I look at old photos, my grandmother had lamps in that same room. One of the first things I did when I took over this house is I hired an electrician to come in and put in 4 recessed lights. So the room itself is built where it's a box, but then it has the bay window area that juts out. And then it's got built-in cabinets that bookend a fireplace on the west end of the room. And you enter not necessarily at the center, but at kind of like the 2/3 section, because the room itself actually juts into the front yard. So I have it's like it was made to have 4 recessed lights in those areas. And in all honesty, I wish, if I had a chance to talk with my mother for 5 minutes, into the other world, the first thing I would say is hey, I put recessed lights in the living room, and it's friggin' awesome.
It'd be about the house.
It would. I would tell her that, and I'm like, why did you never do this? This is so perfect.
Yeah.
And they don't end up. Here's the beauty of it. With the positioning of where they are, they don't affect anything as far as glare on where we've positioned our television. They're not right above you on the couch if you're trying to take a nap, so you don't open your eyes and get, blinded by the light. And what I did is I put in these LED light fixtures that have essentially an opaque case over them. And what that does is, as you said, it helps diffuse the light. So it's not like if you're underneath, you see a really bright spot and then it gets shadowy and shadowy beyond it. It gives more of a glow than a spotlight type presentation. And it's funny that you bring lighting up, Tucker, because at my work, we're kind of dealing with this thing right now of they want to start streaming. And I said, hey, guys, I went to film school for a hot second. I know that you just don't put a ring light up and consider it lit. We only have fluorescence in the ceiling. There's a lot that goes into it. A television studio, you can't just pop one up out of nowhere.
Right.
video requires this. And I'm like, look at this. Look at where everyone is completely washed out because the white balance isn't there. And I'm like, you're not going to invest in great camera equipment that can do some of that inside the lens. You are getting the cheapest stuff that you can find. So you really need, and here's the thing, it's like carpet. So here's carpet 101. You can get a lower to mid-grade carpet to feel luxurious if you invest in a really great pad underneath the carpet.
Yeah.
So let's,
I think stone tile like the house I live in.
Right. Yeah. I was going to remind you yesterday that there's a 1-day sale at a carpet store, and they were selling carpet remnants, and you can have the edges serged essentially. And
what?
But I forgot about it.
What does that mean? The edges serged? I don't understand what you just said.
So the edge of carpeting is just it's just like a hard, sharp edge where the carpeting ends, but there's nothing about it. But if you look on a rug kind of folds over onto itself a little bit.
Got it.
So when they serge the edge, it's someone who sews. It's a seamstress technique. And so what they do is they essentially bind the edges a little bit so that it doesn't feel like, like if you rubbed your foot against it, you wouldn't cut it on the sharp edge. You'd end up having this nice edge. But 3-point lighting, I mentioned that right off the bat, and I'm like, well, we need to get ourselves some 3-point lighting. And everyone was like, well, what's that? What's that? And I said, oh, why are you all in decision-making power when you don't have any idea? You want it, but you don't know how to get it.
Right.
And that drives me crazy. Sometimes I'm kind of dumbfounded why do we value somebody? Like, why does one person, like in some businesses, get to make all the decisions when they really don't have all of the knowledge? And isn't that what you want? Like, don't you want as a business owner to employ people who can do that, right? Like, so for example, I know nothing about fashion, let's say, okay? So if I were running a huge business, I wouldn't be the one who would say, listen, this is what we're going to do for the uniform for our employees. I would want somebody else who has a deeper knowledge base of what's comforting, what would look good in a retail spot, what looks professional. I would want someone else to help me make that decision, to say like, listen, this is what I recommend. And I look at that and I go like, yeah, you clearly have the knowledge base to do this. So I'm going to allow you to do it. Well, let people thrive where they're supposed to thrive, and also at the same time, don't let somebody else take a project over just because they need a project. Right. How many times have you seen something like, well, we have to think of something for Mikey to do. So Mikey's going to be in charge of this. It'd be like, what? Mikey doesn't even eat sauerkraut, so why are we putting him in charge of the German folk festival? Doesn't make sense.
When it comes to especially like a concept like streaming, excuse me, which the thing is that, so many people do it now, but they're all of a generation that actually understands the tech. The people that you and I end up dealing with who give us money to do stuff are not from that generation. And so they typically will either think that they know what they don't, or will just assume that it's super simple. It's all it is pointing a camera in a certain direction and going. And it's just not. I remember when the pandemic first locked everything down, and at my theater company, we were talking about, hey, what can we do for streaming art? And the company really thought that we were going to do that 5 times every week, that we would just get together and routinely do this. And it's like, no, this is a ton of work, you guys. There's so much that actually goes into making a streaming product look good, especially if you're dealing with things like multiple angles and all that other kind of stuff. And that's just the tech, but the tech has to be good enough to not distract you from the product itself. Then there's the whole making that thing good, which is a whole other question in and of itself. I wanted to, you made a memory pop up in my head when you were talking about rugs, and you talked about surging the rug. Is that the phrase?
Yeah. Surge.
So I immediately went to 1996 in my head and saw a commercial for Surge, right? And it made me think about what one of the YouTube rabbit holes I've been going down lately is on this account called Betamax King. JJ, I think you get a kick out of this guy's channel too. It's some guy in Canada. And he's got, and I can't remember how he got the collection, but he has a hold of like a couple thousand Betamax tapes that were just recording live television at the time. And this is like, mid 80s, early 90s. And what he does is he goes and he digitizes like little commercial spots or little promos for newscasts or whatever, but from a different era, and then just post those. And I get such a kick watching old 30-second TV commercials, especially from the early 90s, and how nothing gets advertised in that way currently anymore. And it's just fascinating. And it's fascinating to me to look at old advertisements from when I was 7 and go, hey, this is actually interesting to me now. Versus back then, it would have been, no, it's just an ad. It's annoying. There's no value to it. But now I'm looking at it and I'm seeing hairstyles that we don't see anymore and clothing options we don't see anymore and people without cell phones and all these other things. And I don't want to reminisce like, oh, what a better time and place. No, it wasn't a better time and place, but it's so crazy to think that we lived through a time that was even just that different from only like, 20 or so years ago. So I've been going down this rabbit hole of watching old television commercials. They're all Canadian. So that's like the one crazy thing. Is that every once in a while it sounds like it's from North Dakota, right? It sounds like it's from America, but every once in a while it'll just be a Canadian reference. But yeah, I really dig those. And we've talked a lot about old commercials on this show, especially when it comes to the holidays. And do you know what I'm talking about, JJ, when I say like, when you watch a commercial that was shot specifically in the 90s, the 90s, no commercials ever looked like that before then, and they don't look like it now. What do you think I mean by that?
So I think it's the same thing for film. I think it's the same for product, like the artwork on products. Each era sort of has its own feel, and really you could guess within a couple of years accuracy where that product originated. So for example, those Surge commercials that you're talking about, it's a bunch of like kids that were slightly older than I was at the time running down an alleyway to jump on top of a couch together.
Right.
And
it was kind of almost like a parkour for indoor kids. So
right.
Like, they weren't doing anything too crazy.
And the idea of a bunch of people jumping on a couch at the same time is a very 90s look.
Yeah.
They do it in Friends. They do it in the Surge commercial. It was the opening to I don't know how many episodes of Real World. It was just a look. And now, when was they did the same thing in the Sunny D commercial after they're like, I got some purple stuff, soda, Sunny D, and then they all jump over the edge of the couch onto it and drink their Sunny D. It is just, it's a 90s trope is what it is. For whatever reason, they thought this will connect with the kids.
Especially if it's going to be something sold to kids, there's going to be a lot of wide angle lenses being used.
Definitely.
A lot of, making body proportions and faces kind of blow up the closer they get to the screen, and there's a high energy level to it. But yeah, I know.
Okay. And with that, so here's an example. The opening to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air uses that wide angle, like, the face getting closer and close, like where it's almost fish-eyed lens at one point. Those are, again, another 90s trope. Early 2000s were these like long, like kind of blowy shots. What sounds less pornographic than blowy shot? It's the look that you end up getting is it's someone standing like out in the middle of a friggin' like desert, but they have a wind machine somewhere and there's a little bit of smoke. And I look at that and I'm like, yeah, this is early 2000s. This is the thong song music video. This is, like Gone in 60 Seconds. This is early 2000s for sure.
Right.
Side note, I have something I'd like to read to you, Tucker. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Well, actually, before I do that, you inspired this deep dive that I did recently.
Oh, really?
Because I have been I'm a pretty big fan of yours on social media, and I like to follow your meat and cheese and cracker boards that you're doing. So when you put together like a cheese and crackers tray, I like to look at it and be like, oh, what kind of cheese is he choosing today for this?
Hold on. Wait, we're talking
And-
about me?
Yeah. You probably
Okay.
don't even realize that you do it as often as you do.
Yeah. Okay.
So, because I think you're somebody who enjoys the cheese and crackers plate that you take and then go and sit in front of the television and watch.
Quick side note, but I'm going to
Yeah.
blow my nose here real quick before I give this quick side note. When I was dating the photographer, one of our earliest, I wouldn't say fights, but disagreements that I felt, it was one of those moments where you just feel so justified on your side of the disagreement that it's actually pleasurable to argue about it because you just feel so right. I had suggested for dinner one night. I was like, you know what'd be fun for dinner tonight? Is like, because we're just going to watch a movie at her place. I was like, you know what we should do? We should just put together like a fun, like, you know, meat and cheese and cracker spread and maybe some like fruits or whatever, just like a meat and cheese tray. And we could just like nibble on it throughout the movie. Wouldn't that be fun tonight? Right. And she thought that was the dumbest idea she had like ever heard. And she thought I was crazy for thinking that would be a fun idea for a dinner one night for just, you know, a couple sitting there watching a movie. JJ, is that a dumb idea for a couple sitting and watching a movie for dinner?
No, that is a fantastic idea.
That's what I thought, because then you can do it together, right? And you can like piece it together and be like, oh, I like a little bit of pepper jack. She likes a little bit of Swiss. We'll get some salami in there, and we'll get a couple different types of crackers in there, and maybe some dips or spreads, like some hummus maybe. Ugh.
So I am a big, I think that a charcuterie board, and even if it's just a simple, you know, like I sliced up just a little bit of cheese and crackers, I still call that a charcuterie board. I think that's one of the classiest things in the world. And so you were suggesting a really great, classy dinner option. It's also great because you can eat as much or as little as you want.
Right.
So if I really want to go to town, I can eat a bunch of cheese and then spend an hour because I'm all bound up in my gutty works. Or just a couple pieces.
Super easy to prepare, right? In minutes. Yeah. There's no heat involved. Whatever you're not going to finish up, you just wrap up and put in the fridge, and then you have it again the next day if you want. The cleanup is nothing, right? It's Ziploc some stuff up, you know, light rinsing and washing of the plates, but you probably didn't make a huge mess except for some hummus. Anyways, it was still a good idea. I'm not dating the photographer anymore, but that's still one of those arguments that I carry around with me where I'm like, I was still right.
So every year we used to get a Hickory Farms box from my Uncle Wes. My Uncle Wes, who is not actually our uncle, but was a fraternity friend of my dad's, who was easily one of the most kind, generous, caring men I've ever met in my entire life. Loved kids, would do things like he would come and pick my sister and I up and take us to Chuck E. Cheese, which is the worst place a parent can ever hope to go. And would give us each like $10 to go play. And so that's the reason that I was able to beat the Ninja Turtles game, is because Wes would give me all that. And then also Wes never drank alcohol in front of us, which I thought was classy. Like he always drank coffee. So Wes Hansen, every year, that's what he got a bunch of families that he loved, is he would send a giant Hickory Farms box. And there was nothing better, because when you'd open that Hickory Farms box, there were these strawberry candies inside of them that were just kind of like plucked, you know, just a little bit everywhere in the wrapping inside there. And my sister and I used to like love those. Those are great. They no longer put those strawberry candies in the Hickory Farms boxes, which disappoints me. But Hickory Farms has clearly become so synonymous with with the Christmas holiday that the people who do South Park made a Christmas album and they wrote a song that Cartman sings called Swiss Colony Beef Log. And it's about how the neighbors always get Cartman a Swiss Colony Beef Log, but the neighbors aren't around this year. And so he's sad because Christmas isn't Christmas without a Swiss Colony Beef Log, without those cheeses and meats. He doesn't know if he can get along. And so then he finds out that Grandma got him a Swiss Colony Beef Log. So this is what I wanted to read to you, Tucker. Once the nation's largest specialty food retailer, Hickory Farms Incorporated has been called America's Middle Gourmet. While the company's chain of mail stores and kiosks specializes in summer sausage, cheese, candies, fruit baskets, nuts, and specialty meats and seafood, an increasing emphasis on mail order marketing characterized the early 1990s. Founded in Toledo, Ohio in the late 1950s, Hickory Farms went public in 1970 and was acquired by General Host Corp. In 1980. After 2 decades of unabated growth, Hickory Farms suffered 2 consecutive annual losses under its new parent. The chain was then spun off to a management-led investment group in 1987 and remained privately held until the mid-1990s. Now, here's the thing. These are the post-World War II origins of Hickory Farms.
Okay.
The roots of Hickory Farms stretch back to the late 1940s when Richard Ransom and his cousin Earl Ransom started a produce business in Sandusky, Ohio, known as Dick's Markets. Dick's Markets.
Mm-hmm.
Seeking a business to even out their highly seasonal work, the cousins casted around for new opportunities, convinced that there was demand for old-fashioned wheels of Swiss and cheddar cheeses like those they remembered from their youth. They tested their idea in a small booth at the 1950 Home Show in Toledo. That first booth was so successful that the partners began licensing 2-person crews to set up kiosks at local and regional fairs around the country. They soon added a 4-pound, 2-foot-long smoked summer sausage dubbed the Beef Stick to their product line and renamed their business Hickory Farms after the Hickory smoked sausage. By 1959, Hickory Farms was selling 1.5 million pounds of beef via over 250 temporary booths as well as mail order. By 1964, the company claimed to have booked more booth space at fairs and exhibitors than any other business in the entire world. The Ransoms established their first retail outlet in Toledo in 1959. The company fostered a country store image with storefronts modeled after a red barn and friendly staffers wearing red and white check shirts and denim skirts. Heavy samplings of sausages, cheeses, and jams was the order of every day. Richard Ransom, who quickly emerged as the company's leader, put a great deal of stock in marketing, in this marketing method, saying, "We think we have the finest products on the market, and the best way to get people to agree with us is to give them a sample." Ransom positioned sample displays in the doorways of his store to attract customers, then offered free coffee to keep them in the store for an extended period of browsing, tasting, and hoped buying. Hickory Farms opened its first franchise store outside of Toledo in 1960, the same year the company was incorporated. The stores quickly evolved into seasonal monsters in Hickory Farms' case. 40% of its sales were made during the fourth quarter, gift-giving holiday season, when its annual balance sheet traditionally went from red to black. The story of Hickory Farms is amazing. First of all, I love that mentality of like, yeah, we'll let you taste it. And we're so confident that we know that you could come in and taste the cheeses, the meats, the jams, the candies, whatever you want. We know you're going to walk out with it. And the last time I heard that same mentality used was genius. And it's when HBO Go was launched. And people were sharing HBO Go passwords like crazy because you could have multiple screens going at the same time. And the CEO of HBO was asked, "Sir, aren't you afraid that like people are just giving away this product over and over and over?" And he said, "No, I think that if you give someone your password, they're going to love HBO enough that they're going to want to get their own subscription so that they never have to lose their place in Game of Thrones or Curb Your Enthusiasm." And he was right. He nailed it, man.
I'm pretty sure the same method is used by drug dealers.
What?
Where they're
I know what you're talking about. Like,
the first
give 'em a
taste is free,
right?
man. The first taste is free.
Yeah. Ugh. I don't know. Well, all I know is that like Hickory Farms. So right after Christmas, Hickory Farms always has a massive sale. And what they want to do is they want to sell any of their inventory that's left that is on like the holiday side. So you can buy it and get 2 of those big 4-pound beef sticks, some cheeses. By the way, their smoked Gouda cheese is the best smoked Gouda I've ever had. It is friggin' phenomenal. And then it usually comes with some of their specialty crackers and then some mustards. Now, we all know that I don't care for mustard, but you know what's great? I just collect all of them and then I give them to my sister and brother-in-law because they love mustard.
You know, I'm always looking for, on my meat selection when it comes to meat and cheese trays, is I'm always looking for some kind of a hard salami, especially if it's got kind of like some pepper on the outside of it. And then I'm looking for pepperoni.
Ooh.
Pepperoni. I still to this day, anytime I buy frozen pizza, I also buy just a bunch of pepperoni to add to the pizza because I always feel like, there needs more. There needs to be more pepperoni here. And then I always just end up just eating the pepperoni out of the bag as it goes. I feel like I'm Ricky from Trailer Park Boys because pepperoni is that damn good. But I never think to get it in like a stick. I should get a pepperoni stick. Oh my God.
Oh, listen,
that sounds like a great and a terrible idea.
I've got about 30 pepperoni sticks in my freezer right now. I get pepperoni sticks from a place called Casetta's in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's an Italian market. If you are in the Minneapolis, Twin Cities area, you have to go to Casetta's. The market is flipping amazing. And their meat counter is run by an old Italian guy. Like, you know, you can tell he's not from the United States originally because he's got his deep, heavy Italian accent. And that's the kind of guy I want to buy my meat from is somebody who, you know, English is not their first language. And here's what's great about these pepperoni sticks. If you get one of them, you can chop it up if you want and dice it or you can cut it into slices. Sometimes I just take a bite off of it and it's coarse ground. So it's not like you can just bite into it and take it away. You kind of have to gnaw on it a little bit because it's so like dense.
Yeah.
It is so good, Tucker.
What do you need?
I'm going to give you some of it.
Yes.
I'd like to give you a pepperoni stick so that you can experience it. And here's the pro tip. Both ends are made kind of the way sausages are in cartoons where, you know, like it's a casing and then they twist the casing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't throw away that little bit that's attached to the casing. Just eat it. Don't waste a single bit of it.
Well, what do you need to do to ensure that like the pepperoni you're going to add to a pizza crisps on the outside and creates a bowl shape? So that the grease sits in the center of it. Like that, to me, is the goal. If you want pepperonis, you want them firmly attached to the pizza with mozzarella, but you want them sitting on top of the mozzarella so you have the opportunity for bowls to form. But not all pepperonis are made the same. So what do I need to get that action going on a regular basis?
Well, you're looking for, so not all pepperoni is made the same. Okay, that's what you have to know. There are certain types of pepperoni that specifically do that. So, for example, you are talking about a cupping pepperoni. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a pepperoni that's made in a specific way that the moisture is going to evaporate from the edges faster than the center. So it ends up like soaking in its own juices as it cooks. Okay.
Ooh, okay.
So the way the meat's stuffed into the casing affects its shape inside the pepperoni stick. So for the curliest pepperoni, you want a pepperoni that was stuffed into a natural or collagen casing. Whether that casing is intact or not when you cook it really makes no difference at all. But it's the way it's the amount of stretch that is given with the casing itself. The heat differential caused by uneven cooking between the top and the bottom of the slice enhances the curl and also determines the direction in which the pepperoni will cup.
Okay.
Thick slices are needed to maximize the temperamental difference, but too thick and it becomes too soft to curl. So you want between a 2.5 millimeter and a 5.6 millimeter range for optimal cuppage.
I see.
And then the moisture retention ability of the center versus the edge of the slice will enhance the cuppage. But since we have no control over this, it shouldn't affect your shopping or decisions.
I mean,
but I agree. I used to call them pepperoni bowls because it looked like I was about to enjoy a delicious pepperoni soup that was inside of it. But you are looking for a specific type of pepperoni that cups. And there are brands out there that specifically make cupping pepperoni.
Okay.
So I highly, highly, highly recommend that. And, even if you don't put it on a pizza, you can just by applying heat. So you could put a bunch of them on a baking sheet and put them into an oven and get the same effect and then pop them on like a delicious Triscuit cracker.
These guys weren't known for cupping pepperoni, but they were known for delicious pepperoni. And unfortunately, at least the one on South University just closed. Happy Joe's here in town. So we lost the South University one. Is there a Happy Joe's in town anymore after that?
No.
Is that it?
That was it.
Oh, man.
Now, here's the thing I didn't know. Do you know Happy Joe's is a franchise?
Yeah. I
didn't know that. I thought there literally was a Happy Joe here in Fargo. I thought there was I'm interested in knowing if someone ends up buying Happy Joe's. Did they have cupping pepperoni, or I thought they did diced pepperoni?
No, they did not have cupping pepperoni. They would do either diced pepperoni or regular pepperoni, but their Canadian bacon was always diced, which I really
what it was.
What really really liked about them. I don't know for sure. So on kbid.com, the restaurant's assets are all being liquidated there. So I've seen you can go buy 20 pizza sheets for $5 right now from all their stuff that was there. They were selling the ticket machine that would count the tickets, whatever, but it called it a ticket shredder. Was it shredding tickets at the same time as it was counting them?
Oh, maybe. That's unfortunate.
Well, I'm guessing it was just so I don't know if ticket counterfeiting or what, or hey, the ticket, once it's used, you don't want to reuse it because it's all creased or whatever. So you might as well shred it. So I wonder if it must have been shredding at the same time as it was counting. But man, I didn't realize that was the last one in the area because their taco pizza is unmatched in this area. And their Canadian bacon. I love their Canadian bacon, and their pizza tasted different. They had a different, a sauce that was specifically a Happy Joe's sauce profile. And now I'm really bummed that we're not going to get that. Shoot.
Well, I mean, it's clear that what Happy Joe's had going for it was more than just nostalgia. It had a specific choice. Well, so here's something I found out recently. Also, Dwayne's House of Pizza. And that is a local pizza place to the Fargo-Moorhead area that is down to 2 locations, I think. They've got one in way South Fargo. They've got one on South University, and then the Moorhead location closed. But they don't use mozzarella cheese. They use provolone cheese.
Oh, really?
And they layer it on. So the provolone comes in a giant cylinder, and so they slice it into round slices, and that's how they go over the top of it. And I think that's one of the reasons their pizza has such a distinct, different taste.
Wait, so what you're saying pizza, Dwayne's House of Pizza is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying for a pizza, for its cheese, they cut like a sheet of provolone in a giant circle?
No. So when you go to the deli and they're probably 2-inch in diameter.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So they get a giant cylinder of provolone and they slice it deli style like that. And then they layer 10 of those circles over each other on top of the pizza.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we think of sprinkling grated mozzarella all over a pizza, right? That look. So that doesn't happen at Dwayne's House of Pizza. Whoa. They're flopping it on like they're dealing a deck of cards, baby. Do you ever do homemade pizza? You ever make the homemade pizza?
So that's actually a thing now that my sister and her husband have made a routine for their Friday. Is every Friday they do homemade pizza night. And so the last 2 times I was there, I got to participate in homemade pizza night. And they do a thing where, they make the dough themselves, and then you build your own pizza, but you put the sauce on it last. And you don't just ladle the sauce on it. You actually have the sauce in like a squeeze bottle. So like
Yeah.
you're putting it out in lines. And like the way they like to make their pizza is they put the sauce on top because then the ingredients don't slide off the pizza. They'll stay on it right there. And when it cooks and you get it out of the oven, you can kind of tell that it's layered slightly differently, but ultimately it all just kind of melts together anyways. So interesting way to try the combo of the sauce, because then the cheese and the crust bind together and the sauce just sits on top.
I feel like that's like a Detroit style pizza. Or there's another one that is part of their like method. Maybe it's
Chicago has the sauce on top, but Chicago is always like a massive deep dish, right? They just do
right. So it's the multi crust.
I feel like, if I remember correctly, because we just talked about this not too long ago on the show, I want to say Detroit style was like super thin, almost like a cracker.
That's that makes sense. Yeah. Side note, when it comes to frozen pizzas, just in general, is there a king of frozen pizza to you?
Well, I think we just need to take Pizza Corner out of contention entirely, because its history is so fraught. And sometimes when I eat Pizza Corner now, I go, yep, this is the same. And sometimes when I eat it, I go, no, this is totally different. So clearly my memory is messed up on whether or not it's any good. If I'm going to take Pizza Corner off the table and go, that's not an option for me, I'm probably going Red Baron.
Ooh, okay.
More than likely. I just did a DiGiorno again the other day, and every time I eat DiGiorno, I'm reminded that I really don't like DiGiorno. And their whole pitch about it tastes like delivery is utter bullshit. They don't have the correct melt. There's a specific mozzarella melt that's a delivery melt, and you just don't get it with DiGiorno.
I always dream of having that pizza where I take a bite, but I pull the piece away and it's the long, like huge piece of cheese.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that the problem is that most of the time there's not enough cling to that piece of pizza I want. So It actually pulls off just like a ton of the toppings with it.
The most delicious shot of pizza being eaten in film of all time is from the very first Ninja Turtles movie. And it's after they've ordered a pizza and they've diced it up, and Splinter got one on his head, and then they're all actually chowing down. And there's a close-up shot of Michelangelo. He's got a bite of the pizza and he's pulling it away, just taking and there's a big line of cheese coming from it. And every time I've seen that, and I've watched that movie about 1,000 times, I get a Pavlovian response where I'm like, I need to get pizza now.
Yeah, it's funny that like at the very beginning, was it Domino's the one in the first?
Domino's is in the first one. You even see, I didn't realize this until yesterday because I actually used the Blu-ray of that to test out this thing I'm building up here. But the Noid is visible in the shot when Michelangelo's ordering from the phone that's in the sewer with them.
Yep.
There's a big Noid right there, and then the guy who plays the Domino's delivery truck driver or delivery driver was the guy who played Michelangelo in the movie, the body double of him. I don't think he did the voice, but he did the body.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's Michelangelo talking to himself when he does the whole, hey, this is a 10, the tab's 13. You're 2 minutes late, dude. Like that whole thing. That's Michelangelo talking to himself.
You say never pay full price for late pizza.
Yeah. Yeah. Wise men say forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza. Yep.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of watching the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies and like having the memories of watching those movies. Like, I don't think I got to see either of them in the theater. I think I watched both of them on home video.
I got both theater experiences, and I remember distinctly, like viscerally, being in the theater for those days. I remember the first one that came out in 89, 90 is I think when it probably got to Fargo in 90, and I moved to Fargo in 90. So it would have been the first movie I saw in the movie theater, I think. I remember sitting down and seeing that they were packing the theater aisles with people. Like they were getting people to sit on the stairs. It was totally against any kind of fire protocol. And
That's
then
awesome.
I remember like it was yesterday, the lights going down and the crowd going insane, ape shit, right? And that was my first experience seeing a movie was like that. And then very few times have I recreated that feeling. One of which was Avengers End Game, although it wasn't at the opening that we all felt that way. But yeah, so I saw that there, and then I also distinctly remember not necessarily seeing it in the theater, but I remember the moment my dad told my sister and I that today we're going to go see Ninja Turtles 2. And it was at 1141 4th Street, and it was middle of the day on the weekend. And we were all, Dad and Brianna and I were all standing in the kitchen. And I just remember him going, guess what we're going to do today? And we said, what? And he goes, we're going to go see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. And we lost our shit. And at that time, I don't think we'd even seen a trailer for it, right? Like trailers were a thing. Obviously you'd see them, but they just weren't as permeated as they are now, like online. So I can't remember what the first ad was I saw for it. I just knew it was a thing. And that I just remember the dopamine rush going through my brain of, oh my God, we're going to go watch Ninja Turtles 2 today. And then we're probably going to eat pizza right after it. If you were a parent and you took your kid to see Ninja Turtles 2 and then you didn't give him pizza afterwards, you're a fucking asshole. Let me just put it that way.
I mean, look at this. This has made such a huge mark on you going, going forward in your life that I think that's the thing is a lot of times we need to be better about treating children to a special moment.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
I remember, so I can remember my dad going to 2 movies in my entire childhood. One was Hook, which we left in the middle of because my sister got sick from eating at the Italian place that's right next to the Safari movie theater.
Oh, but does he get his kids back? Well, I
was like, I don't even know. And in fact, it was just the part where he was becoming Peter Pan, like where he was able to fly again. So, like, what a horrible time to take me away. But the other time was, I remember my dad one random afternoon saying, hey, we'll go see Grumpier Old Men.
Ooh.
And I was like, sure. And he and I went to Safari, and it was in theater number 1, the big theater at Safari. And we watched Grumpier Old Men, and we had a great afternoon. And then afterwards, we talked about fishing and how neither of us want to go fishing. And that was it. And like it's bizarre. And I went to a couple movies with my mom, and especially after my dad passed, I think my mom was like, I should really try and connect with JJ. He loves going to movies. And it's not that my mom was against movies, but my mom is one of those like, wait, what did they say? And then like rewind or pause to go to the bathroom, or because my mom was queen of disappearing into the kitchen, and you'd hear a bunch of dishes rattling, and then she'd come out and she'd be like, okay, so I've got pork carnitas, I've got some Jell-O, I made popcorn, but I also added butterscotch to it. And so she'd come out with this giant tray of food for everybody.
Aww.
Which, by the way, my good friend J. Scott Miller's mom, Donna Miller, was the most gracious hostess I've ever met, where she would yell downstairs like, Scott, would you and your friends like a snack? And he'd be like, no, we're okay. And then she would still come down 5 minutes later with like a small bowl of popcorn for everybody. And then like this nice little army of drinks. So you'd have your options. She'd have like a glass bottle of Arizona green tea, but then there was also like a root beer, and then there was a juice, and then there was just a glass of water. And so you had whatever choice you wanted. And so even though he kept turning down the snacks, she always came down with it. Did you ever have a friend whose parents doctored up popcorn in a way? Like if you were having a sleepover and they made popcorn?
No, none that stand out. I just, as you've been talking about watching movies with your parents, I just keep thinking about how I fucking hate watching movies with both of my parents, and I try to avoid it at all costs if I ever can.
I've bit the bullet a couple times and been like, well, I'm going to take Tucker's dad to a movie.
God damn it. Like when you were like, when your dad was like, hey, you want to go see Grumpier Old Men? My version of that was dad going, hey, do you want to go see Beverly Hills Ninja? And then we went, and that was the movie where I thought, I don't think I can go to movies with my dad anymore. Certainly not comedies, because if someone says a joke that he likes, his way of laughing at it is to go, ha, 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 he said, and then repeating the joke that he just heard to everyone and then laughing out loud again. And he did that multiple times. And he also goes, oh, Jeezle, especially if someone gets hit in the crotch, which happens a lot.
Can we break down that word, by the way?
Jeezle? Yeah, I don't know where obviously, G's is sort of a shortening of Jesus, right? So if you're trying to not take the Lord's name in vain, but still express dismay by stubbing your toe, you might say geez, right? Or geez.
Yep.
But his turned into Jeezle. And I don't know where the ul comes from. I don't know where that second part comes from. I'm just used to hearing it.
It's one of those things where I'm like, what is he trying to accomplish here with this?
Oh, Jeezle. There's always a chortle right before, like, oh, Jeezle.
Right, exactly. So,
and my mom, when she watches movies, she talks to the people in the movie. So, you idiot, don't go in there. What are you doing? Wait, are you sure you want to do that? She does that shit the whole time.
yeah.
And then if she gets jump scared and you're sitting next to her, you're going to bleed. That's just the way it is. So I went and saw Jurassic Park with her at the Fargo Theater. And when they're trying to get away from the raptors at the end, and there's that part where they're up in the ceiling and the girl is dangling and they pull her up just in time, right before the raptor gets to her. Right at that moment, as the raptor jumps up and bites at her, my mom took her nails and dug them into my leg. And she wasn't like, let me get Tucker. She was that freaked out that she tried to just grab onto like the chair and missed, and grabbed my leg and dug in so hard it cut me.
Oh my.
Yeah. And so like, I can't watch movies with mom because there's some level of physical danger depending on what kind of movie you're watching, but also she's going to talk the entire, and she'll do what your mom did. Wait, what did he say? I didn't hear that part. Right. I can't stand, or want to ask you, is that the bad guy? They want to ask you questions that the movie's going to answer for you if you just pay attention. So I can't watch those.
So I remember, okay, so when in 1998, or maybe it was like fall of 97, one or the other, I went and I was getting out of school early, and I was getting 3 friends out of school early so we could go to the very first screening of Scream 2.
Oh.
And I was talking to it with one of my friends, and my math teacher, a guy named Mr. Thiner, went and told the principal I was getting out of school early to go see a movie.
Oh, dick.
And so the principal called me into the office and said, no way, this is unacceptable. You're not leaving school to go see a movie, especially not a rated R horror movie. And called my mom and said, nope, it's not happening. So what my mom did is she picked us all up from school, and we went and we saw like the 4:30 screening of the movie. But it was going to be a special day for my birthday, right? It was going to be, we were going to get out of school early. We got to go see the movie, and then we were going to go and have like lunch. And we're talking, it's a Friday afternoon, right?
It's like you were doing something bad.
Right. And this is mid-October, so it's not like we're getting out of finals. It's, anything like that. And so my mom at that time, a guy named Warren Gullickson was the principal at Discovery. Mm-hmm. And he was actually one of my mom's assistant principals when she went to school. And she was like, he was a jerk then and he's a jerk now.
Yep.
But I will never, and I've seen Mr. Thiner several times since, and I'm always like, hey, you're a jerk. Like that was a rude move, considering like nowadays, like they let kids out for anything. Also, like we all had, it's not like my mom was doing some kind of scam. All these parents had said, yeah, that's fine with us if he leaves early and goes to this movie.
Yeah, because you gotten multiple permissions, right? Because it was you and friends.
Yeah, we all had permission. Our parents all had called the attendance office and said like, so and so is leaving at 12:15 today. So and so is leaving at 12:15 today.
How much power do the parents have in scenarios like that when it comes to
100%?
That's what I thought.
But what this was an old school principal thinking that like like your ass is mine from 8 a.m. until 3:35.
Right.
And also like what did our math teacher get out of this?
I know that's the person who I think is the real dick. Like I understand an old fuddy-duddy fucking principal who whatever, right? He was raised on boiled ham and bread and shit and whatever he had to deal with. So he thinks life has to be hard for everybody else. But the math teacher who literally just like, oh, I'm going to ruin this kid's day. Like, had you done something to that math teacher to make him go, I'm going to fuck up this guy's plans?
No. And I want to say like this was like his first or second year teaching too, which makes it even worse.
Yeah.
Because what I think he didn't realize is he's like, oh, maybe I'll get on the good side of the administration for this. Well, no, you want your students to have your back is what you want.
Right.
So we end up going to Scream later. Scream 3, I wore an Indiana Jones style hat that I got in Winnipeg and pretty much like pretended I was much older than I was. I did everything except for wear a fake mustache because I was only 16 or 17 when Scream 3 came out and I wanted to go see it. And they weren't going to allow anybody, who wasn't 18 to go to that R-rated movie. Mm-hmm. And so I got my ticket. And I went all by myself to a sold out theater to check that out. And so that was fun. But so I just saw the most recent Scream. There's 5 Screams: Scream 1, Scream 2, Scream 3, Scream 4, and then Scream again. Yeah. So I went and saw that this week. And I went and saw it with a friend from high school. I'm part of a scary movie club that she founded. And so we're sitting next to each other, and throughout the whole movie, she kept doing that same thing that your mom was doing to you, where she would like grab my arm and like squeeze it because of, not necessarily fear, but like sort of the anticipation of what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, unless we're on a date, stop that shit.
Right. Yes. I thought, in fact, when I got home, I was like, Jill, I got to tell you what happened at the movie theater just so that there's never a time when you go like, why was this girl grabbing onto you in a movie and you didn't tell me anything about it? Yeah. And it wasn't, there's nothing nefarious whatsoever, but you just sort of feel like I just need to tell you this so that if I get a text message later that's like, hey, sorry for grabbing onto your arm so much, and Jill sees it, it's not like I don't have to be like, okay, hold on.
Right. It didn't say dick. It said arm. It didn't say dick. It said arm.
Exactly. And even if it was,
it's honey,
not too bad.
You just got to say, Jill, honey, I am way too comfortable to cheat on you. Okay.
Right.
I'm way too locked into the way things are right now.
I think we should end this episode with this, which is a reminder about passwords on your computer that you cannot use the word beef stew as a password. It's just not stroganoff.
God damn it, JJ.
That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. That joke was told to me on a man's deathbed.